I didn't cry. I wanted to. But I just stood there in the driveway, holding my car keys, staring at my own front door like it belonged to a stranger. My neighbour June had called me 11 minutes after I pulled out of my daughter's driveway to drive home. 11 minutes. I remember because I looked at my phone when it rang and thought, that's odd. June never calls. We wave over the fence. We talk about her azaleas. We share pound cake at Christmas. We do not call each other on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer. I almost let it go to voicemail and figured I'd call her back when I got home. Thank God I didn't. Let me back up. Because none of this makes sense without the beginning. And I've learned, at 63 years old, after everything, that the beginning always matters more than you think it does at the time. My name is Helen. I am 63 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom house in Raleigh, North Carolina that my late husband Gerald and I bought in 1998, the year after our son was born, the year before everything started feeling like it might actually work out. Gerald passed in 2019, pancreatic cancer, 11 weeks from diagnosis to gone. I don't talk about that part much because there aren't enough words in the English language to explain what 11 weeks feels like when it's all you have left. After Gerald, I did what women like me do. I kept going. I went back to church. I tended my garden. I had my son, Philip. Not in that list, he's mine. And I had my daughter-in-law, Renata. Except no, I need to use the right names. My son. My daughter-in-law. That's how I'll say it because that's how I thought of them, as roles, as relationships, especially her. Especially toward the end. My son, I'll call him by his real name, Thomas, is 34. He works in commercial real estate. He's smart, the kind of smart that looks effortless until you realize how hard he actually works underneath it. He got that from his father. Gerald used to say the quietest people in the room were usually the ones doing the most thinking. Thomas is quiet. His wife, Annalise, is not. I want to be fair. I want to say I gave her a real chance. And I did. For 4 years, I did. When Thomas brought her home for Thanksgiving in 2020, just the 3 of us because of COVID, take-out containers on my good china, I told myself, open heart, Helen. Open heart. She was beautiful. Tall, with this confident way of walking into a room like she'd already assessed it. She had a good job in marketing. She was well-spoken. And she made my son laugh in a way I hadn't heard since he was a teenager. I wanted to love her. And for a while, I think I almost did. The shift was slow. Those are always the ones you miss. It started with the little things, the way she cut Thomas off mid-sentence at dinner, not meanly, just casually, like his words were a TV show she'd already seen. The way she stopped asking about Gerald, about our family, about anything that didn't circle back around to her. The way she started referring to my house, the one Gerald and I poured 30 years into, as that old place. Not to my face. Thomas told me. He laughed when he said it. The way you laugh at something that isn't quite funny enough to let yourself acknowledge it isn't funny at all. But what really started turning my stomach was the money. Now, I am not a woman who talks about finances in polite company, and I would not be talking about it now except that it is the entire point of what happened. So, here we are. Gerald left me in good shape. He was careful, methodical. The kind of man who had a binder for everything and updated his life insurance every 3 years without being asked. When he died, I had the house, paid off. I had his pension. I had a modest but solid retirement account, and I had a $400,000 life insurance payout that I put straight into a CD ladder at my credit union because that is exactly what Gerald would have done, and I was not about to let grief make me stupid. Thomas knew about the general shape of things. He didn't know specifics. That was between me and my attorney, a woman named Patricia, who I've trusted for 15 years, and who has saved me from more paperwork disasters than I can count. Annalise, I realized too late, knew more than she should have. I don't know who told her. I have my suspicions, a cousin of mine who talks too much and thinks too little, but I can't prove it. What I can't tell you is that starting about 18 months into their marriage, Annalise began what I can only describe as a campaign. Small at first, comments about how big my house was for one person, questions about whether I'd thought about downsizing. suggestions that Thomas could help manage my accounts to simplify things for me. She said, simplify the way people say it when they mean control. That particular kind of simplifying that ends with someone else's name on your assets. Then came the second phase. I didn't see it as a phase at the time. I see it now. She began isolating Thomas from me. Gently, strategically, plans that always seemed to conflict with our standing Sunday dinners, vacations booked for holidays, the slow fade of phone calls, of drop-bys, of the easy closeness Thomas and I had built, over 30 years of just the two of us making it work after Gerald got sick the first time, before the final time. By last fall, I was seeing my son maybe once a month, sometimes less, and then my hip gave out. I'd been ignoring the pain for 2 years because that's what I do. I ignore things until I can't. And in November, I finally had the surgery my orthopedic surgeon had been suggesting since 2022. Hip replacement. Left side. 6 to 8 weeks recovery, mostly at home, with physical therapy 3 times a week. Thomas offered to come stay with me for the first 2 weeks. I told him not to bother. I had everything arranged. I had my PT. I had my church friends on a meal rotation. What I didn't tell him was that I wanted him to insist. Isn't that a foolish thing? 63 years old and still waiting for my child to read my mind. He didn't insist. Annalise, from what I could tell by the background silence on the phone call, made sure of that. But here's the thing about neighbours. June Watkins has lived next door to me for 16 years. She's 71, widowed herself, moves a little slower since her knee surgery 2 years ago, and has an opinion about everything from the zoning board to the correct way to deadhead a rosebush. She and Gerald used to argue good-naturedly across the fence about whose pecans were falling into whose yard. I've always liked her. I've never thought of her as particularly close. Just steady. Present. The kind of neighbour you take for granted until you realise you'd be lost without them. During my recovery, June started coming by. Not every day, not in an intrusive way, just appearing. A dish of something left on the porch. A knock to ask if I needed anything from the grocery. Once, when my PT appointment was cancelled due to a scheduling mix-up, and I hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days because I was too proud to ask for help, she just showed up at the back door with soup and didn't comment on the state of me, just set it on the stove and sat with me while I ate. She also, as it turned out, had been watching. I didn't know that part yet. That came later with the phone call. So, the day in question. Thomas had been planning to visit for 2 weeks. A long weekend, just him, to help me with a few things around the house that needed attention now that I was getting back on my feet. Fix the gutter on the back side. Look at the water heater, which had been making a sound. Help me get up to the attic where Gerald's Christmas things were, because the holidays were coming and I refused to let that first Christmas in this house without the decorations be the thing that broke me. He arrived on a Friday. Annalise did not come. She had, according to Thomas, a work event. This was fine. This was more than fine. This was the most relaxed I'd felt in months. We had 3 good days. We fixed the gutter. We found the Christmas boxes. We ate at the kitchen table like we used to, long after the food was gone, just talking. And I remembered what it felt like to have my son back. The real version of him, not the careful, slightly apologetic version he'd become in her presence. On Sunday afternoon, he drove back to Charlotte. I stood on the porch and watched his car until I couldn't see it anymore. Then I got in my own car to go pick up a prescription I'd forgotten at the pharmacy on Friday, the one over on Falls of Neos that I'd been going to for 12 years. My phone rang while I was at the stoplight 2 blocks from home. June. I answered because something in my stomach dropped when I saw her name, the way it does when you already know. Helen. Her voice was different. Careful, not her usual voice. Are you in your car right now? Just left, I said, going to pick up a prescription. Good. A pause that lasted long enough to make my hands tighten on the wheel. Don't go back to the house yet. I need to talk to you first. I pulled into a parking lot. A Walgreens, not even my pharmacy, just the nearest thing with a space to pull into. June, what is it? It wasn't a question. It came out flat because I already knew it was going to be something I didn't want to hear. That woman was here, she said. Annalise. She came Saturday morning after Thomas went to get your groceries. She had a man with her, Helen. They were inside your house for over an hour. Everything in me went very still. I still have Gerald's old game camera, she said. The one he used to set up at the tree line because of the deer. Thomas gave it to him years ago. I've had it pointed at my bird feeders, but I moved it last month when I started noticing a car I didn't recognize. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure until yesterday. What did it get? I said. What it got was this. Saturday morning, while Thomas was at the Harris Teeter 20 minutes away, a silver Nissan Altima parked in front of my house. A man I had never seen, mid-40s, heavy-set dark jacket, got out of the passenger side. Annalise got out of the driver's side. She had a key, my key. Or a copy of one. They went inside. They were there for 1 hour and 14 minutes. When they came out, the man was carrying a box. A banker's box, the kind with the cut-out handles. He put it in the trunk of the Altima. Then Annalise straightened her jacket, went back to her own car, and drove away. June had gotten the license plate. I sat in that Walgreens parking lot for a long time. I didn't cry. I've said that already. I am not a woman who falls apart in parking lots, or anywhere really, though I reserve the right to fall apart later in private when the work is done. I called Patricia, my attorney. She picked up on the second ring, which is one of the reasons I've trusted her for 15 years. Tell me everything, she said, and so I did. Here is what Annalise had taken, as best as Patricia and I could determine once I got home and went through things carefully. 2 folders from the filing cabinet in Gerald's old office. The filing cabinet I kept locked, somehow unlocked. The folders contained bank statements, the deed to the house, and this is the part that made Patricia's voice go very quiet, a copy of my will. Not the most recent one, the one from 2019, the year Gerald died, before I updated it in 2021 with Patricia's help, after I realized I hadn't changed the secondary beneficiary designation. The outdated one, the one in which, due to an oversight in grief, certain accounts were left in an ambiguous enough state that a clever person, or a clever person's lawyer, might attempt to argue for access. She's building a case, Patricia said. For what? I said, though I knew. For a claim against the estate in the event of your death. Or, more likely, to use as leverage to pressure Thomas into certain financial arrangements now. A pause. Has she been discussing divorce with him, to your knowledge? I thought about the last 6 months. The distance, the careful way Thomas had started to speak about the future, vague and non-committal, in a way that wasn't like him. The way he'd asked me, once, almost offhandedly, what I thought about reverse mortgages. Thomas, who is 34 and had no reason in the world to be thinking about reverse mortgages on a house he doesn't own. She's been discussing something, I said. Patricia filed for a civil protection order the next morning, citing unlawful entry and theft of personal documents. I filed a police report. The officer who came to the house was young, patient, thorough, and extremely calm in the way people are when they've seen enough of the world to stop being surprised by it. He took the camera footage June had already uploaded to her laptop. Bless that woman and her technological competence. And he took my statement and he told me not to touch the filing cabinet until forensics could dust it. Forensics. In my own home. Gerald would have hated this, I thought. Then I thought, no, he would have been furious and he would have handled it, and he would have made sure every piece of it was done correctly. I tried to channel him. I mostly succeeded. What happened next came quickly, or felt like it did, though Patricia tells me it was actually 5 weeks of process that just moved without significant delays, which apparently is unusual, and I should appreciate it. The key thing, the thing that made it all move, was Thomas. I had not told him yet. I had not told him because I needed to know what I was dealing with before I put something in front of my son that he couldn't unsee, something about his wife that would end his marriage and reorder his entire life. And I was not going to do that lightly, not without being certain, not without having something solid in hand. When I did tell him, it was a Wednesday evening. He drove down from Charlotte without stopping. He arrived at 8:30 and sat at my kitchen table and didn't say anything for a long time. Thomas is quiet. I've said that. His father was quiet. The quietest people in the room are usually the ones doing the most thinking. What Thomas said, finally, was, "She asked me last month to add her name to the title of this house. She said it was for tax purposes." I reached across the table and held his hand. "He's 34 years old." He looked about 12. "I told her no," he said. "I told her I'd have to talk to you." She didn't like that. What Annalise had not known, because she was smart about many things and had simply not thought this particular angle through, was that Thomas had a recording on his phone, not intentional surveillance. He'd accidentally left a voice memo running during an argument 2 weeks prior, a habit he'd gotten into when he started using it to take notes for work. 37 minutes of audio in which Annalise laid out, in terms that became clearer the angrier she got, what she had been planning, what she believed she was entitled to, how she had been patient about it. "I didn't listen to all of it," Thomas said. "I couldn't." Patricia listened to all of it. It took 3 weeks after that for Annalise's attorney, a man from Charlotte who billed $400 an hour and seemed genuinely surprised that we came as prepared as we did, to advise her to accept the terms Patricia proposed: return of all documents, no claims against any estate assets, current or future, a signed and notarized agreement waiving any interest in the property, and full cooperation with the police investigation. Annalise signed. The criminal matter is still ongoing. Patricia advises me not to say more about it than that. The divorce between Thomas and Annalise was finalized 8 weeks ago. He is living, for now, in the spare room down the hall, the one that used to be his when he was 17, the one I repainted twice since then, and will probably repaint again once he finds a place of his own. He comes downstairs every morning and makes enough coffee for both of us. He is grieving, I think, not just the marriage, but the version of his life he thought he was building. That grief is real, and I don't minimize it. But he is home, and he is safe, and he is himself again. June came for dinner last Sunday. I made pot roast the way Gerald's mother taught me, with the pearl onions and a little red wine in the braising liquid, and Thomas made his cornbread, which is better than mine, and he knows it. We ate at the kitchen table until the food was gone, and then we kept sitting there, the three of us, in the comfortable silence of people who don't need to fill up the air to feel easy with each other. Before she left, June stood in my doorway and said, "I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." I kept second-guessing myself. I told her the truth. You said something when it mattered. That's what counts. She squeezed my hand and went back across the dark yard to her house, and I stood on the porch watching the light come on in her kitchen window. And I thought about how you spend your whole life building something, a home, a family, a life that means something. And you think the danger will always come from outside, from strangers, from forces you can't predict. You don't think it will park in your driveway with a copy of your key. But you also don't expect it to be stopped by a woman with a game camera and 16 years of quiet faithfulness and soup, left on a porch without a word of judgment. I'm 63. I've buried a husband. I've had my hip replaced and my trust broken by someone I tried hard to love. I've sat in a Walgreens parking lot and held myself together by sheer stubbornness. None of that is the thing I'll remember most about this year. What I'll remember is Thomas pouring me coffee in the morning without asking if I want it, because after 34 years he already knows, and June's kitchen light going on in the dark. That's what you hold on to. That's what stays. I think about the filing cabinet a lot. Not with anger anymore, that passed, but with something quieter, a kind of recognition. Because Annalise didn't walk into my house on a random morning. She walked in because she had studied the situation, calculated the window, and made a decision. And the reason it almost worked is the same reason most things like that almost work. She counted on nobody paying attention. That's what I keep coming back to. Attention. June paid attention, not in a dramatic way, not with some grand plan. She just noticed. She moved a camera. She kept her eyes open when it would have been easier, and certainly more comfortable, to look the other way and tell herself it wasn't her business. That choice, that quiet, unglamorous choice, is what changed everything. There was nothing heroic looking about it. It was just a woman doing the right thing because she had the character to do it, even when no one was asking her to. I spent a long time in my life thinking that integrity was something you displayed in the big moments, the dramatic ones, the ones people would remember. What I understand now, at 63, is that integrity is mostly just a long series of small decisions made when no one is watching and there's no obvious reward. June made those decisions for months before I ever knew about it. That's not performance, that's character. And character, I've learned, is the thing that actually holds when everything else comes apart. Thomas is the other piece of this I sit with. My son is not a foolish man. He is thoughtful and careful, and he loved his wife genuinely, and still he missed things. We both did, because when we love someone, we tend to arrange the evidence in their favor. We explain away the strangeness. We tell ourselves we're being fair, when sometimes we're just being afraid of what fairness might cost us. The thing that finally cut through all of that wasn't emotion. It was information. It was Thomas sitting at my kitchen table with facts in front of him that he couldn't reframe and choosing to look at them clearly, even though it was the hardest thing he'd done in years. That kind of clear-eyed courage, the willingness to see the truth even when you built your life around something different, that takes real strength. Not the loud kind, the kind that costs you something. And then there's the matter of what I did with what June told me. I pulled into a parking lot. I called my attorney. I did not make accusations I couldn't support. I did not confront Annalise. I did not let the anger make decisions for me. I let the process work because I was prepared, not because I had anticipated this specific situation, but because Gerald taught me, 30 years ago, to keep my affairs in order and to know who to call when things went sideways. Preparation is not pessimism. It's respect for reality. It's understanding that the world doesn't organize itself around what's fair, and that the people who come through hard things are usually the ones who had already done the quiet, unglamorous work of being ready. I didn't earn a good outcome because I deserved one. I earned it because June had integrity, Thomas had courage, and I had the good sense to act carefully when it mattered. Those three things together, doing right, thinking clearly, holding steady, that's what actually saw us through. The rest was just paperwork.